Good afternoon, everybody. Now I will start with the dictation. Difference between 1955 Citizenship Act and 2015 Act. So on the left hand side of 1955 Citizenship Act, you write point number 1, registered OCI on the left hand side of 1955 Citizenship Act. Point number 1, registered OCI may be granted Indian citizenship after 5 years from the date of registration provided that he or she stays in India for 1 year and during that 1 year stay he or she is not allowed to leave India even for a single day. Now point number 1 on right hand side, 2015 Act. Point number 1 on right hand side, 2015 Act, you have to write this provision has been done away with. This provision has been done away with, and now they are allowed to leave India for a total of 30 days in a year, and even then if the government is satisfied then they may be granted Indian citizenship. Now point number 2 under 1955 Citizenship Act. It defined overseas citizenship of India. It defined overseas citizenship of India, that is OCI. Now point number 2 under 2015 Act. It expanded the definition of OCI to include spouse of NRI, minor children of NRI, a spouse of PIO and OCI PIO card holder, and spouse of PIO card holder and OCI card holder, and great grandchildren of a person who was Indian citizen after commencement of Indian Constitution. Now point number 3, under 1955 Citizenship Act. Point number 3, under 1955 Citizenship Act, there were separate provision for PIO card holder and OCI card holder wherein PIO card holder got less benefit and OCI card holder got more benefit and OCI card holder got more benefit. Now point number 3, under 2015 Act, both the card, that is PIO and OCI card, both the card, that is PIO and OCI card, were merged into single OCI card. Now point number 4, you just write no provision in this regard. Now point number 4, under 2015 Act, OCI card of a spouse can be cancelled. OCI card of a spouse can be cancelled if a court dissolve their marriage, if court dissolve their marriage, and B, if spouse marries another party, if a spouse marries another party without divorcing. See, this is a new topic which will start now. Issues of safety of Indian abroad. Now, under background, what we'll try to understand, about the new diaspora. We have already discussed about the old diaspora. A question was asked in civil service examination, that difference between old and new diaspora. So, old diaspora pertain to diaspora formation that took place during colonial period, and new diaspora pertains to diaspora formation that happened after independence, right? So we'll be focusing on that what kind of patterns of migration took place after independence and where people went. Now, second is MOU on manpower, Memorandum of Understanding on Manpower, because we are dealing with the issues of safety of Indian abroad. Then Social Security Agreement. Social Security Agreement, here there are three important issues in this. The issue of double payment, totalization of period of service, and export of benefit. We'll try to understand each one of them. Then e-migrate project, and then overseas worker resource center. Now regarding the background information, let's start with the patterns of migration after independence. Now if you analyze the patterns of migration that happened after independence, so after independence, what was the situation in India? The situation in India was very, you can say it was a very anarchical kind of situation. Anarchy was prevalent in the sense that communal rights, etc., was happening. So people thought that India may not be stable enough and it is no longer a safer country. And so the resourceful people, the professional people, the educated people, whosoever had means, they decided to shift to a safer destination or to a destination which will provide them better facilities, safety, etc. So they preferred to move to developed countries. So initially, just after independence, if you analyze the pattern, so this was the pattern. Highly skilled professional people, educated people left India for the developed countries like US, UK, Canada, Australia and New Zealand. There they were welcomed with open arms. They were allowed to take their family with them, etc., and they were allowed to settle there. This trend continued till late 60s or so, but in late 70s, due to oil boom in the Middle East and Gulf countries, the pattern got reversed. Now no longer highly skilled professional people were leaving India. Instead, semi-skilled or unskilled people left India and they moved to Middle East and Gulf countries because there the demand for semi-skilled and unskilled worker was great or huge. This trend continued till late 80s, and then in 90s again the trend reversed, that now the IT professionals started migrating again to the developed countries, right? So this is the broad pattern which can be identified after independence. Now what happened was that the people who moved to developed countries and the people who moved to Middle East and Gulf countries, they were facing entirely different sets of problems. Now different sets of problem means that in developed countries at the most the people were facing racial slur, racial abuse, etc., or racial discrimination. But the people who moved to Middle East and Gulf countries, they were facing entirely different kinds of problem. For example, holding back of passport, long working hours, less payment of salary, then what you can say, exploitation of women worker, stifling working condition, etc. So these kind of problem they were facing. Now the government of India got concerned about their safety. So how to ensure their safety without interfering in those countries? So for that, what the government did was that it designated around 18 countries as ECR countries. Now, these ECR countries, ECR means immigration check required countries, and these 18 countries were mostly located in Middle East, Gulf, and in Gulf countries, some South Asian countries, some African countries. So, in all, 18 countries were identified and they were listed as ECR countries. And why they were listed as ECR countries? Because in these countries, labor and welfare laws were very weak and there was a high possibility or high chance of worker being exploited, right? So once these countries were listed, so if any Indian worker was going to these countries, then their passport was affixed with ECR stamp. So once the passport got affixed with ECR stamp, then emigrants clearances is needed to move out of country. So without obtaining emigrants clearances, the person cannot move out of the country. But who will give the emigrants clearance? The emigrants clearances will be provided by Protectorate of Emigrant, POE. The Protectorate of Emigrant gives emigrants clearances only after studying employee's credential, his past history, that if any case etc. is registered in his name for exploiting the worker etc., the working condition, the salary etc., the living condition etc. And when POE is satisfied, then only he gives immigrants clearances and then only the labor can leave India for that destination. And this was basically done to ensure his safety, his or her safety. So I hope this background information is clear. So in order to safeguard the interest of Indian workers, apart from these, various other steps were initiated by the government of India and that pertain to MOU on manpower. So the government of India also decided to enter into a bilateral agreement with like-minded country so that they can work to safeguard the interest of worker. Now, the highlights of MOU are that bilateral cooperation in employment generation, and also to ensure safety of also to ensure safety of worker, because it was a bilateral agreement, so ensure safety of worker from both the countries. Second was to maintain transparency in recruitment process. Now, how to maintain transparency? By complete disclosure criteria. By complete like everything, if it is disclosed, nothing is hidden, then there is a low chance of worker being exploited. Third, a joint working group would be set up comprising of member of both the countries, and they will be meeting regularly so as to see whether MOU is being implemented in true letter or spirit or not, right? And fourth, if the worker happens to be working in organized sector, then in that case it was the duty of the host country to set up legal and administrative cell so that when if worker has any grievances, he can approach these cell for grievance redressal. Clear? So let's write up till this point, then we'll discuss the next point. Let's start with the background. Contemporary migration from India are of two types. Contemporary migration from India are of two types. First, migration of highly skilled professionals, with higher educational qualification, migrating to developed countries, particularly to the USA, UK, Canada, Australia and New Zealand. USA, UK, Canada, Australia and New Zealand. The flow started just after independence. The flow started just after independence and gathered momentum with the migration of IT professionals in the 1990s. Second, flow of unskilled and semi-skilled worker going mostly to the flow of unskilled and semi-skilled worker going mostly to the Middle East and Gulf countries going mostly to the Middle East and Gulf countries following the oil boom mainly from mainly from South Indian state of late however northern state have also emerged northern state have also emerged as a leading state of origin for such migration leading state of origin for such migration. Change the paragraph. The nature of problem faced by Indian diaspora the nature of problem faced by Indian diaspora in the developed countries is different from the nature of problem faced by Indian diaspora in Middle East and Gulf countries. In developed countries, at the most at the most, Indian diaspora faced racial discrimination, racial discrimination or racial abuse. But in the Middle East and Gulf countries, but in the Middle East and Gulf countries, the Indian diaspora were facing entirely different sets of problem, were facing entirely different sets of problem. For example, holding back of passport, holding back of passport, long working hours, long working hours, less payment of salaries, less payment of salaries, stifling working condition, stifling working condition, exploitation of woman worker, exploitation of woman worker, etc. On a bilateral basis, on a bilateral basis, for the protection of, on a bilateral basis, for the protection of Indian worker, India has signed MOU on manpower, MOU on manpower with United Arab Emirate, UAE, United Arab Emirate, Kuwait, Jordan, Oman, Qatar, Bahrain, and Malaysia. Now highlights of MOU. Highlights of MOU. Bilateral cooperation for employment generation. Bilateral cooperation for employment generation. And to ensure safety of worker. And to ensure safety of worker. Second, to maintain transparency in the recruitment process. To maintain transparency in the recruitment process through complete disclosure criteria. Through complete disclosure criteria. Third point, a joint working group to meet regularly so as to see how MOU is being implemented. Fourth one, in organized sector, for the safety of worker, a legal and administrative mechanism should be put in place by the host country. Now, Social Security Agreement. See, first here you have to understand what is Social Security. So, Social Security in layman's term, if I describe, it means, like suppose today I am earning certain amount of income and maintaining a certain social status in the society. Now tomorrow something happens and suppose I'm not able to work for 6-7 months, then in that condition whether I will be able to maintain same level of social status or not will determine my social security. So there are tools for social security like provident fund, gratuity, insurance, etc. So through these, in difficult time periods, it helps the people in maintaining their social security, right? Now, why the need for agreement then? It is such a beautiful thing, then why the need for agreement? Now, here you have to understand three issues involved in this. Now, I will try to explain it through example so that it will be easy for you to understand it. Now, let's suppose that I am working with MNC, multinational company, because now it's a globalized world and the company may be having branches in different parts of the world. So suppose I am employed with MNC and it is having a multiple branch across the world. Now I joined this company and worked in this company for nearly 2 years in India. So while working in India, as per India's social security rules, every month certain percentage of my salary was deducted and kept aside in social security account as per India's rule. Now I am giving you a hypothetical situation, like suppose India's social security rule stipulates that you have to deposit for a minimum of 5 years in India's social security account to avail the benefits of social security, right? So since I have worked in India for 2 years, so I have deposited in India's social security account for 2 years. Now I am transferred to USA, and US social security rule stipulates that you have to deposit for a minimum of 9 years in their social security account to avail those benefits. So what will happen to me now? As per US social security rule, certain percentage of my money will be deducted and will be kept in US social security account. So the maximum working visa which I got for working in USA is 5 years. So when I got transferred to USA, so I started depositing in US social security account, and at the same time, since I have deposited for 2 years in India's social security account, so I didn't also want to lose that, so I have to deposit in India's social security account as well. So I have to deposit in India's social security account as well. So now I am doing? I am making double payment, that I am paying at two places. While I am working in USA, but I have to deposit in India's social security account as well, because if I won't deposit, by 2 years money will go down the drain. Okay. Now after working in 5 years, I was making payment at both the places. But after 5 years, I have to return back to India. But while returning, I couldn't take my hard-earned money which I deposited in US Social Security account along with me. because of stipulated rules that I have to deposit for 9 years there. So, who was at the receiving end? It was the worker who was at the receiving end. While I was paying at both the places, but I was not able to take my money with me. So I was losing my hard earned money. So when government took notice of it, it decided to intervene and tried to come out with some amicable solution. Now the solution was, after lots of discussion and deliberation, the government came up with a solution of totalization of period of service. Because see, if MNC is working in India, then it is only possible when government has permitted it. Without government permission, it cannot operate. So if there is an agreement between both the government on totalization of period of service, then instead of making double payment, a person will be making payment at any one place because he is continuing his service, right? And the export of benefit will be also there because now he will be able to take his hard earned money with him. Now suppose India has an agreement with USA. I'm giving you hypothetical situation. We don't have social security agreement with USA. Now suppose India has agreement with USA, then in that case, after working for 5 years, when I returned back to India, how much total period of service I have done? I have done 2 years service in India, 5 years in USA, total comes to 7. So 7 years of my service is completed. So if now I continue for 2 years in India, so that will add up to 9 years of service. So then whatever amount of money I have been depositing in US Social Security account for 5 years, along with 4 years interest, I will be able to take back after completing 9 years period. So this is the benefit which was to be given on reciprocal basis. Because see, it's not that only Indians are working everywhere. Other countries' workers are also working in India. So if you don't give me those benefits, I will also not give those benefits to your worker. So, no, so naturally the country will agree, and this will lead to a solution that if totalization of period of service is there, then the worker will be exempted from double payment and he will also be able to export his benefits along with him. Okay, so it's clear. Now, e-migrate project. What is e-migrate project? And mind you, India has signed social security agreement almost with 18 countries in the world. So I will give you the name of those countries, don't worry. Now, e-migrate project. E is electronic. So what is e-migrate project? E-migrate project basically is a project wherein all the stakeholders who are involved in immigration process are brought on a common platform. For example, who who are the stakeholders in the immigration process? It's the employer, recruitment agent, labor, immigration official, protectorate of immigrant, and Indian embassy. Now, if all these stakeholders are brought on a common platform and provided with soft copy, then it will be very difficult for any, say for example, recruitment agent or employer, etc., to manipulate contract, etc., for their benefit. For example, I am giving you an example here to make it more clear. What was happening before? Now, the recruitment agent were mostly recruiting semi-skilled and unskilled worker for Middle East and Gulf countries. Now, these people were not literate and they were told to sign documents, many documents, and some of the blank documents also. So, without knowing anything, they used to sign. And that document was then manipulated by the employer at its own end for his benefit, and which was detrimental to the worker. Now, through this process, when all these stakeholders are brought on a common platform and they are provided with a separate copy, soft copy of the contract, then obviously nobody will be able to manipulate it. So, this will ensure safety of the worker. Correct? Secondly, the worker who are going to ECR countries, their passport are affixed with ECR stamp and they have to obtain immigrants clearances, then only they can leave India. The immigrants clearances is given by Protectorate of Immigrant, who gives clearances after, as I told you before, verifying the employer's credential, his past history, working condition, salary, nitty-gritty of the contract, etc. And when POE is satisfied, Protectorate of Immigrant is satisfied, then only the worker, he gives immigrants clearances and the worker is free to move out of India. Just excuse me for 30-40 seconds. I will be just back. Sorry for the interruption. Okay. So we have discussed Social Security Agreement and e-migrate project. So let's start the dictation. Social Security Agreement. Social Security Agreement. This agreement provides exemption. This agreement provides exemption from double payment of Social Security. This agreement provides exemption from double payment of Social Security through totalization of period of service which leads to export of benefits on reciprocal basis, on reciprocal basis. India has signed bilateral Social Security Agreement. India has signed bilateral Social Security Agreement with Belgium, France, Germany, Switzerland, Luxembourg, Netherlands, Denmark, Austria, Portugal, South Korea, Hungary, Czech Republic, Norway, Finland, Canada, Japan, Sweden, and Brazil. Now, e-migrate project. MOIA, that is Ministry of Overseas Indian Affairs, MOIA, that is Ministry of Overseas Indian Affairs, started the e-migrate project, it will provide end-to-end computerized solution. It will provide end-to-end computerized solution for all processes in the immigration system. The system will link all key stakeholders. The system will link all key stakeholders that is employer, recruitment agent, labor, immigration official, protectorate of immigrant, and Indian embassy. On a common platform, the worker who are going to ECR countries, needs immigrants clearances, which is given by protectorate of immigrant, gives clearances after studying the employer's credential or after studying or verifying employer's credential, contract, working condition, salary, etc. And when POE is satisfied, then only worker is allowed to leave the country. Now OWRC. Now OWRC, it is a help desk which operates 24/7, 365 through 11 languages, or you can say it's a help desk which operates round the clock through two toll-free number in 11 languages. So try to understand this. Overseas Worker Resource Center. This is nothing but a help desk which operate 24/7, 365. That is round the clock throughout the year in 11 languages through two toll-free numbers. One toll-free number is for the worker who intends to work abroad. Now, the worker who is going abroad may be having lots of apprehension because he is leaving his families, his children, etc. So, he may be apprehensive that what kind of situation he may be facing, if he is in any trouble, who will be there to help him, how he will be getting help, etc. etc. So, what he can do is he can dial this toll-free number, choose his preferred language, and get counseled by the people who are providing help, right? Then second toll-free number is meant for the worker who are already working abroad. Now suppose I am again giving you a situation, like suppose there is a holding back of passport. Now if worker's passport is withheld, then what he will do in that situation? So what he has to do is he will just dial this toll-free number, lodge a complaint, then this center will forward this complaint to the nearest embassy located in that country. Now the embassy will approach the destination, pick up the worker and provide the worker with boarding and lodging till the time he safely returns back home. Clear? So this is in nutshell OWRC, Overseas Worker Resource Center. Now it is headquartered in Gurugram and it is linked with MRC. It is also linked with MRC. MRC is Migrant Resource Center, where data pertaining to the migrant who are leaving the country are maintained. So this data is also merged with OWRC in Kochi, Chennai, Hyderabad and Gurugram. So it also acts as a data center in that sense. It also acts as a knowledge and counseling center. Now it is a single point window source for registering, responding and monitoring complaint and grievances. So this is OWRC. Clear? So let's write about it. It is headquartered in Gurugram. It is headquartered in Gurugram. It is a help desk which operates 24/7, 365. That is round the clock throughout the year. Round the clock throughout the year. OWRC is linked with MRC, that is Migrant Resource Center. OWRC, that is Overseas Worker Resource Center, is linked with MRC, that is Migrant Resource Center, in Kochi, Chennai, Hyderabad and Gurugram. Kochi, Chennai, Hyderabad and Gurugram. OWRC also acts as Knowledge and Counseling Center. It is single point window source for registering, responding and monitoring complaint and grievances. Okay, so let's some question has come. I will take that question, then I will move on to the new part. Sir, if I want to migrate to a country as a worker, then do I need to go through test called IELTS test, and does this test also apply on a person going abroad as an engineer, doctor, etc.? See, beta, this will depend upon the country's criteria, which country you are going to. If you are going to English speaking country, then definitely IELTS test etc. will be required if they require. Now there is exemption also, so it depends on that. So as India has signed bilateral social agreement with 18 countries in the world, but in this list major developed countries are missing, US, UK wise. So we we are in advanced level of talk with both the countries. and due to some what you can say some discussion or deliberation, give and take thing, this thing hasn't happened because we haven't there were lots of what you can say uh, fervor that we are going to sign FTA with UK, but that is still pending. Anyway, so it will happen soon because it is in very advanced stage. Clear? Now let's move on to the new topic. Now this is the last topic, issues of welfare of Indian abroad. Now here we'll be focusing on Indian Community Welfare Fund, Mahatma Gandhi Pravasi Suraksha Yojana. Now this has been continued, but since it is in the name of Mahatma, so just I will give you overview of that. Pravasi Bhartiya Bima Yojana, No India Program, Study India Program, Scholarship Program for Diaspora Children, Tracing the Route, Voting Rights to NRI, Helping Indian women in distress who have been divorced or deserted by their NRI husbands, and Pravasi Bhartiya Divas. So let's start with Indian Community Welfare Fund. Now first and foremost, who contributes in this fund? The people who will be benefited will only contribute. So it's Indian Community Welfare Fund. So Indian community, Indian passport holder, they will contribute and the government of India will contribute. Then how this fund is utilized and why this fund is kept? See, this fund is a kind of contingency expenditure which is kept at every embassy, and initially when this scheme was started, so it was only meant to be utilized in distress situation. If OIP, overseas Indian passport holder, is in distress, then this fund can be utilized. But in 2016, it was made broad base to incorporate basically those aspects which will further promote India's interest. For example, to promote community welfare activities and to improve consular services. So for these purposes also this fund was utilized. So the government gave a go ahead in 2017, and now apart from catering in distress situation, this fund can also be utilized to promote community welfare activities and to improve consular services. Now, what are the distress situation? For example, holding back of passport issue I told you. So the cost of hiring a vehicle, going to a point, picking up the worker, then providing the worker with boarding and lodging and sending the worker back home. So whatever expenses etc. will be required on that, so that expenses will be met through ICWF, Indian Community Welfare Fund. Now suppose if worker or OIP, overseas Indian passport holder, is stranded and evacuation is needed, air evacuation is needed. So in that case also this fund will be utilized. So recently the evacuation which was carried out in Ukraine etc. was, this particular fund was utilized. Third, in case of medical emergency, like suppose the worker becomes terminally ill and he has no money, then in that case also this fund can be utilized for the treatment. Fourth instance, like suppose the worker OIP, overseas Indian passport holder, he is detained and a penalty etc. has been imposed on him, and prima facie it appears that the OIP is not at fault, then in that case also this fund can be utilized to pay the penalty. So these are the distress situations. Another distress situation can be like suppose if a worker dies and the employer is unwilling to send his mortal remains back home and the family is unable to meet the cost of airlifting the mortal remains, then in that case also this fund can be utilized to transfer his mortal remains back home in India. So these are the distress situation. Now, uh, how to promote community welfare activities? For example, if the worker, sorry, again work, sorry, if the embassy had to incur expenditure on organizing some cultural festive program, then for that it had to hire renowned diaspora artists, etc., and that will be incurring cost. So that cost will be beared through or borne out by Indian Community Welfare Fund. In order to promote Indian culture abroad, suppose the embassy wants to celebrate India's cultural festival, etc., celebrate various festivals, renowned major festivals, then whatever expenses may be incurred on it, it will be incurred through Indian Community Welfare Fund. Thirdly, if the government wants to promote Indian language outside India, so for doing that, it will have to hire teacher, pay their salary, etc. So again, whatever expenses will be incurred, it will be incurred through Indian Community Welfare Fund. So these were the things to promote community welfare activities. Now, how to improve consular services? So suppose the embassy thinks that it is going to hire additional staff to provide better counseling services, then it can do so, and whatever expenses will be incurred on it, it will be incurred through Indian Community Welfare Fund. Third, by hiring a vehicle to visit jail, detention center, labor camp, etc. So again, whatever expenses will be incurred, it will be borne by Indian Community Welfare Fund. Now suppose the embassy wants to develop e-app, then in that case also whatever expenses will be incurred, it can be incurred through Indian Community Welfare Fund. So these were the ICWF. A question has come, sir. Some month ago, Uganda government threatened to Indian diaspora. How did India resolve that crisis? See, beta, I have discussed this same. In past also, when Prime Minister Mrs. Indira Gandhi was the Prime Minister, so she also took active part and resolved this crisis. And the recent crisis uh, which you are talking about, see, diplomatic channel is the only channel through which you can probably sort out the issues. Otherwise, there is no other channel available. Now, during that time, Indira Gandhi, through various diplomatic channels, what she did, she put pressure on Idi Amin. Idi Amin was the president of Uganda, and he gave ultimatum to Indians to leave their country. And through various diplomatic channels, he put pressure to pay compensation to the people who were leaving their country. So even the compensation amount was a meager amount, but it has huge symbolic significance because government of the day cared so much for its diaspora that it has forced the foreign government to pay compensation. That was it. So, so even the issue which you are talking about was solved diplomatically. It was not given so much relevance so as to make it a very big issue. Okay. Now, Mahatma Gandhi Pravasi Suraksha Yojana. Mahatma Gandhi Pravasi Suraksha Yojana was basically a social security scheme, and it was basically meant to secure worker by through saving so that their old age is secured and their rehabilitation is also secured. But it was a voluntary scheme. It was not it didn't become very popular among the worker, and so the government has to discontinue this scheme in 2017. Now this scheme was introduced in 2012, and after 5 years it was discontinued. The highlight of this scheme was that the government also contributed from its own side by paying, say, for 5 years or till the time worker returns back home, whichever is earlier, right? So this was Mahatma Gandhi Pravasi Suraksha Yojana. So let's write about Indian Community Welfare Fund first, then we'll move on to MGPSY. Now we are starting the dictation. Indian Community Welfare Fund. Indian Community Welfare Fund provide contingency expenditure. Indian Community Welfare Fund provide contingency expenditure incurred by Indian Embassy for carrying out welfare activities for overseas Indian passport holder who are in distress It stands extended to all embassy around the world. Its guideline have been revised. Its guideline has been revised to make it more broad base, and expand the scope of welfare measures. The new guidelines have become operational with effect from 1st September 2017. 1st September 2017. The revised guideline covers the following three key areas. Assisting OIP, that is overseas Indian passport holder, assisting OIP in distressed situation. Second, support for communities welfare activities, and third, improvement in counselor services. Now, first key areas. You write first key area as heading now. Assisting OIP, that is overseas Indian passport holder. Assisting OIP, that is overseas Indian passport holder in distress situation. This will be heading assisting overseas Indian passport holder in distress situation. Now under this you have to write A, B, C, D like this. So point A, providing boarding and lodging facilities for distressed OIP, Second, extending emergency medical care to the OIP, extending emergency medical care to the OIP, overseas Indian passport holder. Third, providing initial legal assistance, providing initial legal assistance to the OIP, to the OIP in deserving cases, to the OIP in deserving cases. In bracket you write prima facie when it appears prima facie when it appears that the worker is not at fault. Fourth, providing air passage to a stranded OIP, providing air passage to a stranded OIP. Next point, to incur expenditure on airlifting, the mortal remains to India, to incur expenditure on airlifting the mortal remains to India in such cases where employer is unable or unwilling to do so, employer is unable or unwilling to do so, and the family is unable to meet the cost, and the family is unable to meet the cost. Last point, providing the payment of penalties in respect of OIP, providing the payment of penalties in respect of OIP for illegal stay in host country, host country. Now second key area, we'll be heading now second key area, support for community welfare activities, support for communities welfare activities. Support for communities welfare activities. The Indian Embassy has been authorized to incur expenditure to promote community welfare activities. For example, by organizing cultural program through renowned Indian diaspora through renowned Indian diaspora to celebrate major Indian festivals to celebrate major Indian festivals to promote Indian language by hiring teacher and paying their salaries, allowances, etc. and paying their salaries, allowances, etc. Now, third key area as heading improvement in counselor services. Improvement in counselor services. Indian Embassy may incur expenditure. Indian Embassy may incur expenditure to improve counselor services. For example, by hiring additional counselor staff for rendering better counselor services. Hiring additional counselor staff for rendering better counselor services. Hiring additional counselor staff for rendering better counselor services. B. Hiring of vehicle to visit jail, police station, detention center, labor camp, etc. Development of e-governance solution application to address counselor welfare matters. Okay, I'm leaving it here. So next when we meet, we'll start from MGPSY dictation and continue onwards. Now I will take questions. Sir, Khalistani movement agitators around the world who are NRI, OCI, they found with activities that affect national security, unity and sovereignty. They seek for establishing their homeland and don't respect for India. Is there any logic of giving them benefit associated with Indian diaspora? Even utilizing those benefits, they harm the country. So what is our government view on this, and what should be our view on this for exam purpose? Actually, Subrato, I will be dealing this in detail when I will discuss security issue. But here I must tell you that government has taken some serious step now. You may be aware that NIA has filed an FIR, and it has captured, and it is asking for videos uh, from various countries where agitation etc. took place, and the government is going to take harshest of measures against them. In detail, I will deal when I will be talking about internal security issue, and you are correct to say that they are not entitled for these benefits. So definitely government will either cancel their passport or cancel their OCI card initially or whatever. So then probably next step will be there. So the first step which the government has taken, and it's a strong step, that NIA has filed an FIR now, and NIA is still investigating the cases, and more FIR will be filed. Any other question? Or should I conclude? I'm taking permission from you. Unless and until you tell me that, okay, conclude, sir, I will be here. Or if you have any question, you ask me. Yes, even if the criminal etc. is arrested, definitely, normally they will visit so that extradition etc. is done. Why not? And if he has committed any offense in that particular country, then the law of that country will deal with him. Then embassy won't interfere. So should I conclude now? How does India mete out asylum to any high profile person who is facing political discrimination in his home country? See, this probably is part of IR. So when you will be um, taught higher, you will come to know about it, because it depends upon the relationship with the country, what kind of relationship we have. Any other question? Should I conclude then? Should I conclude or not? Or if not, then please, if you have any question, let me know. नहीं अभी तक तो उन्होंने yes sir. Okay, thank you.